Hello there, I'm out in Ainsdale, having a little bit of a run in the woods, but I thought it was an opportune place to have a little chat about backpacking, or more precisely long distance trail backpacking with a dog. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that myself and Cora, my little goldendoodle, we've covered quite a few of the national trails, camping pretty much all the way, I think apart from one night when there was thunderstorms. And I've had quite a lot of requests to the channel, people asking me to make a video with my tips for backpacking long distances with a dog. So that's what today's video is going to be all about. Now, I don't pretend to be the font of all knowledge really with regards to backpacking with a dog, so all I can really do is tell you what I've learned, what mistakes I've made as well, and you can make your mind up whether or not these tips are any good to you. So what I've done is I've decided to break this video down into sections really, and they're the sections that I think are important when you're going on a long distance trail with your dog, and the majority of it would be applicable whether you're camping, staying in B&Bs or whatever you're doing accommodation wise. So first of all, what I always consider is getting Cora fit and prepared for the trail. That's really important, and I've learned this by mistakes I've made really. The first long distance trail that we did was the Cumbria Way, and Cora was quite a young dog at the time. I think she was about, oh I don't know, 15 months thereabouts, so she was quite young. And we'd done a couple of, you know, overnight wild camps, but no really long hiking, me included, but this isn't about me getting fit enough to do it. And off we went on the Cumbria Way, lovely trip, but we got to Keswick on, was it day 5 possibly, and I noticed when we stopped at the campsite that she was, don't dig a hole, come here, she was licking her paw, and I had a little look because if I'm honest, I hadn't really thought about it, about the wear on her paws, and it was really inflamed, the pad, and I bought her some kind of balm for it, see if that eased things up for a day, and we took a little day off, but it was still a bit tender and a bit sore, so we ended the trip there and took her home. There was no long-term damage at all, but I certainly wouldn't have made her keep on going with a sore pad. So it's important that you actually get your dog prepared. And pretty much after that, I decided to get more active with her and get out on the trails more, and certainly get hair pads on her paws prepared for the rocky ground really, because I think that was what was causing the problem more than anything. So that's one thing, is get your dog fit enough. A couple of days out on the trail, your dog might seem fine, but if you're doing a really long distance trail and you may be looking at, you know, a couple of weeks to maybe even, you know, 3-4 weeks out on the trail, it's a long time for us as humans, and we can go training and everything. For your dog, it's hard work. So what I've done with Cora is I've really gotten her used to it. We do a lot of mileage now. She comes running with me whenever I can take her running with me. We do lots of long walks at the weekend. I try to vary the terrain that we're on, don't I? She's got a stick at the moment, I don't know whether you can see her on the video. I keep an eye on her paws as well, and she does really well. So I suppose tip number 1 is prepare your dog, make sure your dog's fit enough. So you've been taking your dog out on long hikes and you've got your dog really fit, they've got nice tough pads on the paws, and they're ready to go. The next thing I think of is my planning. Obviously, if you're undertaking a long distance backpacking trip, there's a lot of planning that you have to do for yourself about the route, your equipment, and that's where your dog has also got some importance. What you need to think of is what planning has to be in place for your dog. First thing I always look at, if I can get untangled there, is your tent. So I started out using a one-person tent. I had a Lanshan one for me and Cora, and she is, as you can see, she's not a large dog, she's probably a small to medium sized dog, and she fitted in the Lanshan one just about, and that wasn't too bad for overnight, maybe 2-3 nights even camping. But if you're doing a long distance trip where you're using that tent every night, I feel personally that we needed some more space, so I got a 2-person tent, and ever since then we've been using 2-person tents. The extra space that you get, particularly in bad weather, it's invaluable to me, and I find it really important. There's no sort of worries about touching the inside of the tent, be it a single or a double skin, or if it's wet and you've got lots of condensation. You've got room to spread out. Your dog's got room to go and sit on their own for a bit if they're anything like Cora, and spend a little bit of time on their own contemplating. Another really important aspect, and it really is important, this is the dog food. If you're going away for, say, 2 to 3 weeks backpacking on a really long trail, I think you need to plan ahead. 3 weeks or even 2 weeks supply of dog food is quite a lot to carry. What I've done in the past is make horrific mistakes with Cora. I've taken a week's supply of dog food, but I've not looked in guidebooks or on maps to see if there were places where I could pick up dog food and whether similar food would be available, and that was a mistake, because it's really important not to swap and change your dog's food as well. You want to take what they're used to, and if you can, buy or have at points to pick up the food that they normally have. Now, I realise that's not always possible, and certainly for me and Cora it isn't. So what I've had to do is plan ahead and look if there are similar foods. So she eats dried food, and so I will try and provide her with dried food as we go along. Now, I've made this mistake and I've really learned my lesson from it, and poor Cora wasn't too great with it either. So we actually did the West Highland Way. Now, it was only a week's backpacking, and I took what I thought was just about enough food, but we actually ran out of food on the final day into Fort William. And I got to the campsite, and all I could buy for her was some basically a cheap wet food from the site in Fort William. So I fed her that, and she seemed quite happy and wolfed it down as she does with anything. But the next day we had to get the train from Fort William to Mulgai. Well, actually no, to Glasgow and then to Mulgai, sorry. And we were on the train and we're going along heading to Glasgow, and she was uncharacteristically getting really quite restless, and she was looking at me worried, and I thought, oh, maybe she really needs the toilet. So I took her into the sort of central part of the train, and I had a little bag of wipes if she did make a mess, and poo bags. And unfortunately she had the most awful diarrhea. It was horrendous. I was so embarrassed, and I cleaned it up to the very best I could with the wipes and everything else that I had, and informed the guards when I got off as well, and apologised. But she still had an upset tummy on the platform at the station in Glasgow. Again, she had diarrhea. Did my best to clean it up, but it wasn't the best experience, to be honest, and I absolutely put that down to swapping and changing of food. So that's another recommendation, is to plan ahead with your dog's food. What I do now is I will tend to look on a map, I'll Google and I'll search to see if there are places where I can pick up dried food. Something I haven't done is post food ahead. However, if I do a long distance trail where I have to do that, I will, and I'll send the food she normally has to a post office, and then I can collect it as we're along the trail. So another area for planning, which might seem strange in this country, is actually water sources and locating water. Now you would think somewhere like the UK, which is incredibly wet, it wouldn't be a problem. But actually I've had difficulties sourcing water sometimes on long distance trails. When I was on the Pennine Way, it was actually, there was a stretch, can't remember what day it was now, it was that long the trip, but we were certainly on a stretch on the Pennine Way and there was just no clean water available for the entire day, and I had a water purifier with me, but the stuff that was available was, you know, bog water, and that was it, that's all we could use. So I did use my water filter or water purifier, but I wasn't particularly comfortable doing that. And this young lady is my priority. She's got to have her water before I do, and we've got to make sure she's got a supply. So I would recommend looking on your maps, making sure there's water sources. If there aren't, make sure you pack enough with you. I always carry a little bowl and a bottle if I'm concerned about water sources, so that she can have a drink. I've actually got one with me today. I suppose talking about Cora's little drinking bowl leads me nicely into the next area, and that's kit for the dog. Just waiting for this aeroplane to go over. We're not far from Southport Strip where a lot of planes take off, so I think it's gone. Right, so I've broken this down into kit for your dog on the trail and kit for your dog at camp. And the first thing I'm going to start with is your dog's lead. So for Cora, for her lead, I use a waist bungee lead. You've seen it probably on a lot of my videos. It's the type of lead or leash, if you're in the USA, that goes around your waist, clips on, long lead, bungee, your hands free. She's got it on now. I've got it wrapped around this tree stump on my foot. Brilliant piece of kit because it lets you use your poles if you use hiking poles. Here's aircraft number 3 taking off. Video by an airfield. That's a free tip for you. Right, so yeah, to use as a bungee lead, I always use that. I can use it hands free, I can use my poles, I can get at things, but it's also got on it a small part where you can put your hand through and it's like a normal lead, so you can keep her under short control if you need to. I always use that. What I don't use is this dog running harness when I'm out hiking. It's great for running. Stays on her nice and taut while she's out in front, hey, but they're not very good for keeping a control of your dog if you kind of want to change direction and stuff, because it leads from the back. So what I tend to use is a very straightforward basic harness of webbing, something that will not get too wet and something that is comfortable. I once went on a hike, I think it may have been the coast to coast, and I put a harness on her that was relatively new. And it was a lovely harness, all the bells and whistles on it, but unfortunately it rubbed on her chest a little bit, and I noticed it was getting a bit uncomfortable for her, so I checked her out, and there was just a little bit of inflammation on her chest. So shows where's a lead when, sorry, a collar when we're away as well. So what I did was I left the harness off for a few days and used just a lead and collar, and she was fine then, and we could use it again. That leads me on to a lead and collar type thing, doesn't it? So I always put a collar on it. I know it's a legal requirement anyway, but I do. She wears a collar. She has she wears a collar. She either has a collar that lights up, or she has a small light on it, and that's just to help me a little bit if it's dark and we're outside of the tent, especially if she gets off lead for a minute. I can keep an eye on her, you know. I also have a little disc as well with her name and my phone number, and she's chipped also. We've been using in recent times though a tracker. and they're okay. The tracker that she uses is a Tractive, I think it's called, and it's fine. There's a payment each month for it though. You have to subscribe for it, which I think is quite expensive, to be honest. It's about £15, maybe a little bit more, and it only works if you have a wireless connection. So you lose wireless connection and it doesn't work, which is really disappointing. Although it uses GPS, it has to connect to your phone wirelessly to use it. So on some trips it's useless, but I'd rather have something than nothing, so I do still use it with her. Something that I rarely use, or I should say Cora rarely uses, is a waterproof jacket. I find they're okay if you're out for a couple of hours, keep the worst of the weather off the dog. But if you're out for you know, a long sustained period in driving rain, I've not found it makes any difference. We're lucky she's got a double coat, so that helps massively. I tend not to use it. She does have a kind of fleece coat that covers her legs that we use in the winter to try and help reduce the snow sort of baubles that can connect to her coat. And I also put a little bit of coconut wax, hand rub it up, and I put it through the back of her coat, because she has sort of flares there, don't you, on the hind area, and that just stops the snow connecting. I carry a little bowl, as I mentioned. It's always very useful. There are loads of different ways that you can give your dog water. You can get these little bottles where you squeeze them and it comes into the top, and they look great. I just go for the lightest and most basic option that we can, which is a little collapsible bowl and a bit of water. Yeah. So, what does this young dog need at camp? She's not as young anymore, actually. She's heading towards 5, aren't you? Cora, I've tried many different sort of sleep systems, if you like, for her. I've tried little inflatables for her. I've tried making my own sleeping bags, bits of fleece sort of blanket for her, and they've all been rubbish. I'll be honest, they've all been rubbish. What I use now is actually something called a woof bag, and I'll put a link in this video because I'm not getting anything for this. It's brilliant. It's hand produced by a lady on I think it's Etsy or something like that. This is on Facebook as well, and they are brilliant, and we've used that right through the year. If it's sort of very midsummer, I won't take it because she doesn't need it, but the rest of the year I do. I also have one of these, you know, the micro thin, ultra lightweight foam camper mats for humans. Well, I take one of them for her, and it's cut down so she can lay on it, and that just insulates her a little bit. And sometimes I'll just take that if it's a really hot kind of weather, just so she can sit on something that she knows is her place, and I think she quite likes to know that that is her place, don't you? Yeah. And that works well. It does work well. Where the woof bag really came into its own though was on the coast to coast, and I was actually walking that in May time a couple of years ago now, and we were up on the fells above Black Sail Hut, and you know, it was sort of late spring really, and it started to snow, and it was like, oh my goodness, and the weather was horrendous. We were freezing. I just had 3 season kit with me, and I put it was a Lanchantu we were using at the time, popped that up, got in. She got snuggled up in her woof bag, and it was freezing all night, and she was as warm as toast. I'd like to say I was, but I wasn't. Next morning we went out, and snow everywhere, all the water was frozen. It had been a really cold night, so it was very useful taking it even during the springtime. Now, there is something else which we do that I'm not sure where it fits in terms of kit at camp or on trail, I'm not sure, but I always use a balm on her feet. So what I do use is Mush's Secret Wax, and what I do is I put it on her paws, and I put it over the morning before we go hiking, and I put it on at the end of the day. There are lots of different paw waxes out there, and I just like Mush's Secret Wax because it sounds brilliant, and it makes me think of kind of huskies mushing through the snow, and I have to be honest, that's the reason I've chosen it, but it works well, and it seems to help a paw really well. I remember a poor little spaniel with a German couple who we saw on coast to coast. It was on the coast to coast, the White Lion pub, I think it possibly was, where we were camping in Blakely. And forgive me if I've got the name of the pub wrong, but we were camping there, and this poor dog, its paws were wrecked, and one of them was so red and sore. So I gave them some of the paw wax to put on some of the mush's wax, but I think their walk was over and they were having to go home. But yeah, it was a shame, and it just reinforced to me how we need to look after our dogs when we're away, because nobody's making them go, are they? They're just doing it to be with us because they love us. So I'm just thinking what else there is, and I suppose in the miscellaneous section of tips, let's talk about dog theft. Unfortunately, I'm aware, as I'm sure you are, that dogs get stolen, sometimes to be sold, sometimes to be kept, and sometimes to be used in dog fighting as bait for dogs that are getting used for that. It's horrific, and I'm really aware of that when I'm backpacking, especially when you're on your own. What do you do with your dog? Well, what I don't do with my dog is leave her unattended. If I'm on a campsite and they won't let me take the dog into the toilets, washing facilities, I take no bloody notice, and I take her in with me, because I ain't leaving her outside. And I'll make sure she doesn't run amok or mess anything up, but that's the risk I'm willing to take, and if I get shifted off the site, so be it. I'm only there for a night. I'm not losing my dog. I have a similar philosophy with shops. When you're on a long distance trail, you do have to restock, and you do have to go in shops. Now what I'll do is, if they won't let the dog in, I'll actually click her outside on the lead, and I'll go to a member of staff in the shop while I'm still in air line of sight, and I'll ask them to stand and watch her. And up to now, on many occasions, they've always said yes, and they've kept a little eye on it while I've run around the shop, got me bits and bobs, bought them, and come outside, and I'm always grateful that it means so much. And shops like Co-op and Spa have done that for me, as well as smaller places, and that's really well appreciated. So I think that's the end of my little tips section for backpacking with a dog. I'm sure there's an awful lot more that I could go into, but I can't think of any right now. But if you've got any questions, pop it in the comments, and you know, I'm not saying I'm right about everything I'm saying, I'm just telling you what works for me, but I will tell you what works for me and how I've gotten through situations backpacking with Cora. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like it. I'd be made up if you'd comment as well. It really helps the channel, it shows engagement, and I think they promote it more if that happens. And I'd be really honoured if you would subscribe to my channel. But I'll see you soon out on the trails. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye.